In 1488, he established the first art school in history, providing classical sculptures for study from his own precious collection. Here, he spotted a precocious young talent who was working with marble for the first time.
One of this young artist's early projects was to copy the head of a faun, an ancient satyr-like figure. And Lorenzo came to look at it and said, oh, that's very good, but kind of in a joking way said, but you know, fauns are supposed to be old men, and you've let this fellow have all of his teeth, and very few old people have all of their teeth. This young man was mortified that he'd been criticized, and he immediately knocked out one of the teeth with a chisel and had Lorenzo come back and look at it again.
Michelangelo Buonarroti was only 13.
Lorenzo is a connoisseur. He really knows what he's looking for. He's got a very good eye, and he sees it immediately in Michelangelo. Lorenzo takes him right under his wing, because I think he knows that this guy's fragile. He's a troubled young man, and he has to really cajole him.
Lorenzo decided to bring Michelangelo into his family. The young artist was given his own rooms at the Medici Palace to grow up alongside Lorenzo's 7 children.
What I think is interesting is the close relationship that grew up between Lorenzo and Michelangelo. They seemed to see each other almost every day, and particularly interesting is how invested Michelangelo became in Lorenzo's approval.
What Lorenzo does with Michelangelo is something new. It's a very intimate relationship between patron and artist. Lorenzo would invite Michelangelo to his dinner table. Michelangelo would sit there with people like Botticelli, with Ficino, and he would listen to the sort of things they were talking about humanist theories, about classical antiquity, and he absorbed all that, and you can see it coming out in the sculptures and in the drawings and in the paintings of that period of Michelangelo's life.
As the young Michelangelo learned his craft, his talent was pulled in 2 different directions. He applied himself to traditional religious subjects with great devotion, but he was increasingly drawn to the raw drama of the classical legends he heard at home. Michelangelo sensed that the influence of Lorenzo de' Medici was leading him in a dangerous direction. Florence, 1501. Home of the Italian Renaissance for nearly 200 years, it is a city at the heart of an artistic revolution. And now, in a workshop behind the cathedral, an extraordinary work of art was beginning to take form. A single 13-foot block of marble had stood for 35 years waiting for a sculptor brave enough to take on the challenge. That sculptor's name was Michelangelo Buonarroti.
Michelangelo lived for his work. He was, I think, by any standards, a workaholic. He rarely ate. He didn't sleep very much. He would often set away in the dead of night with his hammer ringing away. He didn't take his boots off, apparently, for months at a time, so that when he did take them off, the skin came along with the boots.
The colossal project would take nearly 3 years to complete. To guide his progress, Michelangelo submerged a small wax model in water. Day by day, he let the level drop. And what Michelangelo saw emerging from the water, he chiseled carefully from his marble block. He also devised a constant shower of water to keep the dust down and his body cool. The giant Michelangelo was creating would come to symbolize his struggles against the family he had once adored. "15 years earlier, the sculptor had been adopted into the greatest family in Florence. Michelangelo had moved in with the Medici. The young artist was exposed to a world of artistic achievement. This single dynasty had nurtured the greatest artists of the Florentine Renaissance. But every work of art produced in their name served a greater purpose: the promotion of the Medici brand. Their patronage declared the power of a family that controlled all of Florence. Michelangelo was raised alongside the heirs to the Medici dynasty. And he watched as Giovanni de' Medici was prepared for life in the church. The cousins were forced to roam through Italy, seeking the support of friends who could lead them on the path back to power. In Florence, Michelangelo had shrugged off his association with the exiled Medici, and now his masterpiece was nearing completion. The city would soon have a formidable symbol of independence. On the 25th of January, 1504, Michelangelo felt ready to expose his work to the scrutiny of the outside world.
The David started out as a commission for the cathedral in Florence to be put far up on the top of the building. That's why it's so big, because it had to be visible from the ground. Well, when he finished it, the authorities came to look at it, and everyone agreed that this was such a monumental step forward that it would be a shame to put it up there on top of the cathedral, because nobody would ever see it. And what they decided was that it ought to be put outside the town hall. but context determines meaning. On a religious building, it would have been primarily understood as David the prophet, the God-given hero. In front of a public governmental building, it became, almost automatically, a symbol of the city itself.
What Michelangelo had created became the ultimate symbol of resistance to the overbearing Medici.
The Republic wants that image. It wants Florence to be David, but it wants the Medici to be seen as Goliath. So what Michelangelo creates is this amazing piece of Republican art. It's to show Florence after the Medici, slaying the Medici. That's what David's all about.
Even Michelangelo himself believed that Medici ambition threatened the future of the city of Florence.